So now this next one intrigues me quite a bit because I have never heard this one before you and I started having this kind of conversation. So it is the art apologetic.
Yes.
So the
I
idea that,
actually I actually don't want to claim this one for myself so far as the
okay,
name. Now, I
okay,
already was thinking about this, but I want to also give credit to a friend, Elias Wallace. He's a musician, and make sure you look him up and listen to his music. It's really good. But this art apologetic is all about the answer of how can we, through the arts, show how beautiful and satisfying and wonderful that God is. So this is very, in my mind, it's really closely connected with the Holy Apologetic in the sense of that we don't only want to say that, God is true, but that his ways are beautiful and that he is worth knowing, that
mm,
he is so awesome and beautiful. So do we create art and write music and write stories that creates a longing in people's hearts to know God? And it doesn't have to necessarily be, you know, um, Touched by an Angel, where every single episode somebody gets saved or something
right,
like
right,
that.
right.
Doesn't have to have like the gospel presentation and everything. No, that's not what I'm talking about. But
Okay.
is there different stories in art that really kind of show how beautiful and wonderful his creation is, and how great it is to know God, or aspects that he has created? Because guess what? He's created marriage,
Hmm.
he's created love, he's created everything that is good in this world.
Right.
And so why don't we do things that celebrate those things, and then give nods and attributes them to God,
Right. Right.
instead of just saying we enjoy these things because they're so wonderful and that's the end. And
Right.
so this way it actually brings a depth and meaning to behind it.
Yeah, I remember watching recently the movie, the Les Miserables movie, with
Hmm.
Anne Hathaway in it, and there were multiple times in the course of that movie that I was brought to tears because of the deep longing that was felt, or even the
Hmm.
way that that story itself pointed towards God and our need
Hmm.
for God and what He could do, and so it connected with me on an emotional, on my feeling level that often descriptions of God's holiness wouldn't have. And so there are two sides
Yes.
of that same coin. There is the holiness of God and how we need to live and all that kind of thing. But there, you're right. There's that beauty of God. There's that we connect
Hmm.
to. There's a God that's described in Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. But then there's that God that's described in Psalms and in the Song of Solomon and all of those others that connect with that emotional feeling part of us. And it's not that one is better than the other or one over the other. It's that both together help us to understand who God is. And so you're saying that
Right.
that art apologetic is just another way that we create things that then help people overcome those barriers and
Yes.
point towards God. So
So specifically, there's somebody who's a master about this in history, C.S. Lewis. We all
right,
know his Chronicles of Narnia. And he said, inside of man, there is a watchful dragon. So in his understanding, a barrier, something that is actively, like, every single time you come at this dragon with overt God things, that it just wants to attack and eat it up.
right.
I say, but art and music and beauty goes or sneaks around the watchful dragon and is able to get to the heart. And he said
Mm,
that's what true good art does, and what true good story does. And this was all in the context of allegory, that you don't want allegory, in other words, story that is showing you things about God, to be too obvious, because
right.
then that ruins the technique. The
Exactly.
point is to not make it so obvious that it basically feels like a sermon. You want it to be artful, you want it to be delicate, you want it to be in such a way that it gets around those overt barriers and gets to the heart of the matter. And so that is how we want to create art in order to be able to do that.